up, does it? You know, if there's only one person. No.
That's right. Oh, there we go.
Have you got your participant list? Good afternoon. I'm Marilyn L. Rice. If this is your first visit, welcome to the Middleway Words, the Midlands Book Festival. This is a tete-a-tete with questions and answers. And if you have a question for us, please write it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you, and then we wouldn't feel lonely sitting here. I'm the author of 7 novels and 2 fiction booklets on Kindle. My latest novel is The Singing Horses, published by Austin Macaulay. And I was delighted to get a letter this morning from a friend telling me that she'd actually downloaded it. It's the sort of thing that makes an author's day, you know. And you may find out more about me and my books by Googling me or watching my pretty videos on the Middleway Words YouTube channel. There are details of where you can purchase them, or if you require any details about us after the session, you can contact us on the FB site chat or by our personal details, which we are going to give you, I'm sure, several times through this session. Now, I would like to introduce you to my colleague and friend, Katherine Hetzel. She is the author of 7 children's books. Her latest is Squidger's Guide to Super Stories, an impressive book designed to help children with their writing. Katherine, I have a burning question for you. When I looked at the information, 2 words leapt out at me: AstraZeneca, a company very few people had heard of before COVID, and now it is synonymous with the Oxford jab. You were employed by them as a pharmaceutical microbiologist, and that's right. 11 syllables, and I've rehearsed it well. And I would imagine pretty difficult to say if you have imbibed a bottle of wine. So the burning question is, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who wants to know this, how did you go from a pharmaceutical microbiologist, yes, to writing children's stories?
Thanks, Marilyn. Well, I've always loved writing stories. When I was a kid, I used to write stories. But I'm of that time where when you were sort of doing your O-levels and whatever, people were advising me to go down the science route because it was more, there was more chance of getting a job that paid well, basically. So I went down the science route and I became a pharmaceutical microbiologist. It sounds really posh. It means that I was the person who went around checking for bacteria and molds in an environment that was being used to create drugs for testing on people. And the idea was that you didn't want too many bugs in your product because either then the product wouldn't work or you'd make somebody ill. And if you're testing those drugs, you know, you didn't want any side effects. So when I stopped working, when I had my own family, I got into writing for my children. So I used to write silly stories and daft poems, and gradually they grew a little bit longer. And I thought, I can publish these. And I also found that when I was in school with my children, that not everybody loved books as much as we did. And I naively thought, I can write a story, I can write a book. Got lots of rejections initially, and it's taken me a good sort of 12 to 15 years, I would say, to learn how to write for a reader. It's one thing telling a story and having a good story idea, but it's another thing writing it for a reader. So that's sort of how I made the transition.
Interesting. I'm not sure that people are going to go and get the jab now you've told us all that about the experiments and things that go on in the laboratories. We're all going to be terrified now. Is it safer to have the jab or is it safer not to have the jab?
Always safe. Always.
My second one's coming up next week. So.
Oh.
Anyway, my next question to you is, I know you have 2 children. They're called the Squidglings. And they're young adults now. And you've got a nice husband, Mr. Squidgling. In fact, you and your family, you live in a cocoon of happiness. I'm quite envious, really. But do you think this cocoon has influenced your writing?
Well, I have to say, cocoon of happiness probably doesn't apply to lots of aspects of life. We try and stay positive, I think. I do enjoy writing stories that have happier endings, because I don't like the ones that leave me feeling sad and miserable. So yeah, when it comes to sort of, we just stay positive, I think, and I hope that in all the books that there's something positive that you could get out of it. There's always sort of a message about, you know, making the best of yourself or being the best person you can be. And I found that this came to the fore during COVID, as I mean, as we all know, it's been quite a tough time over the last 18 months. And I got to a point where I didn't feel positive anymore. I was struggling. And so I started to write daily positives on Facebook. And it could be daft things like the sun has shone, or I heard a bird singing, or it could be something as daft as at the moment, Mr. Squidge is making a gas bottle stove. So it's sort of like, I've been saying, oh, great, it fired up, it didn't leak. So I post those positives every day just to try and get me through, and to try and prove that however dark the times are, there's still something there that you can focus on. But I know that you did something similar, didn't you?
I think where positivity is concerned, we're like sisters.
Yeah, you wrote your COVID Chronicles, didn't you?
I did. There's a global pandemic out there, and whether we like it or not, it's still with us, and it's going to be with us for a long time. And I'm afraid I haven't got a lot of time for these people who go, you know, woe is me, and blaming the government, and I want my freedom back, etc. And it concerns me that, you know, people are supposed to have personal responsibility. And I'm not convinced that 100% of our population do actually have that, which means when I go out, I still have my gloves on and I still wear a mask, and I'm very careful. Anyway, when on March the 24th last year, our Boris said, you are staying in, like it or not, and we all stayed in, I felt that we have to get through it the best way we can. Like you, positivity is the answer. So I decided to make daily phone calls to somebody or other, whether they liked it or not. And I started off with a list of 20. And within 6 months, I got about 70 people on my list saying, when is it my turn? I don't want to miss my turn, etc. Everybody was so pleased for this phone call. And somebody said, well, you must have a very big bill. I said, no, because I'm on Talk, you see, and I can get an hour for free or inclusive in my package. And if it gets to 59 minutes, I just put the phone down and redial. You know, it's a great way of spending your time. And people were in sort of waiting for a phone call. You know, I wonder if it's my day today. This is good fun, isn't it? And then also a neighbour who was not too happy, as most people weren't. So we took our bins out at the same time on a Monday, and we're still doing that. We go out and meet on a Monday at 5 o'clock, and we have a nice little chat, and we're still socially distancing on a Monday. But then I had another idea, particularly for 21 days, and that was I would write a journal and put it on my blog, which I did. And then I started putting it on Facebook, and people were interested. So I carried on. And then after 21 days, our Boris said, hey, guess what, folks? We're going to do another 21 days. So I carried on, and I carried on. And then, well, we'll go just a little bit longer. And I kept posting them. And they started as lockdown, and it just said day 1. And then as we continued, it changed gradually to the COVID Chronicles, because we were never actually out of restrictions last year. Even in the summer, Leicestershire and a few other places still had restrictions. Then we had the tier system. So I carried on writing them. And I would talk about world affairs, what was going on. I mean, the American election was a godsend for me. I had a great time with that one. And what I was doing in my life through lockdown and things that were going on around me, like my pesky pigeons, they rule my life. I've got these pigeons who come for food, and they will tap on the window if I don't feed them. You know, it's a nightmare, really. So And it got to the stage where I was getting a bit bored about day 340. I thought, I've had enough of this. So I decided, and the last thing I wrote was, I'm going out to feed the pigeons. I didn't come back for 2 weeks, during which time I got several messages from people saying, are you all right? Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. It's the pigeons that are holding me hostage. You see, it's like this. Mr. and Mrs. Magpie got to the food first and there was nothing left for them. And they're blaming me. So they won't let me go out, you see. This is a bit like your children's stories, you know, and putting things in a bottle, make a story out of it.
Oh, yes.
So there was that. And then we also learnt about my little car that lived in the garage and rather liked going to the local superstore just down the road. And it got to the stage where it would drive itself, you know, and it wouldn't go anywhere else. And this went on. And I would go out, well, the car would take me out each week and we would go for 4 essential items when we were in lockdown, which is the TV mag, wine, ice cream and chocolate. I mean, what else do you need in lockdown and a pandemic? Who needs food? You just need a TV mag to sit glued to the screen, a good glass of vino, you know, knock it back, some good ice cream and chocolate. What else do you want?
So how many words did these chronicles add up to? Because it sounds like you never write it. I mean, I found it really hard to write in lockdown, but it sounds like you never stopped. How many words did you end up with?
The last day was July the 18th. It was day 482 and it was 302,000 words plus. That's the equivalent of 3 novels. So I am grateful to COVID. I'm grateful to lockdown. I'm grateful to Boris because I would never have written 3 novels in that amount of time.
Blimey, that's a lot of words.
I know. I don't read it because, you know, I'm not quite sure what it's going to be like when I read it back. But I do say that I'm going to be like, you know, Samuel Pepys in a few hundred years' time, up there on a cloud, and we'll look down and say, what did we leave the world? You know, my diary,
sort of the diary of our time.
Yeah. I also added things about, you know, memories from the past, which many people found quite interesting. I don't know why, but they did.
So, sort of your past has inspired you in a way for your trilogy, hasn't it? For Sophia's Legacy.
It has indeed. I'm glad you asked me that. Don't worry, we'll get to your books eventually. I have a trilogy, Look After Each Other, Sophia's Legacy, and Love You Forever. I do love you forever. You've become my buddy over the last few weeks. This was, I don't know, an idea that I had from nowhere, mind, body, spirit theme, and Love You for, the first one, Look After Each Other, just in case you didn't see it the first time round, came about as 3 ideas woven together. I met a man called Derek. Never meet Derek. It was a strange person who did nothing but complain and ruined a holiday for me.
Oh, no.
And I also had a very strong relationship with my father and much experience of clairvoyance. And I sort of wove the 3 together and I managed to get a book out of it. And then I realised that there was room for a sequel, Sophia's Legacy, just in case you didn't see it last time round. And after the sequel, people were asking for the 3rd one. The 3rd one is 5 years later. And so that was how the trilogy came about. But I know you're going to ask me what is more, you know, why is it called Sophie, for example? So I'll tell you. It's like this, you see. Sophia, I like the name Sophia personally, and it's Greek. So I like anything Greek, and it means wisdom. She goes to a clairvoyant because she's an under-the-thumb housewife with 2 children, doesn't see any future for herself. And she hopes there's something round the corner. Unfortunately, she kind of misinterprets it and believes that she's going to die, and even knows the date she's going to die, or thinks she does. And this is actually based on a reading that I had with a clairvoyant in my early 50s.
Right.
When he asked me if I wanted to know when I was going to die, because they were asking him if I wanted to know. And for me, no hesitation. Yes, definitely. I'd like to know when, or not the exact date, but when and how. And I can tell you that for me, I had then 21 years left, which told me in my 50s and 60s that I wasn't going to die, so that was fine. And then when I reached 70, not 70 ago, things changed for me. I'm not so sure about tomorrow now, I'm sort of rushing around trying to get people to do things because suddenly time is not on my side. But anyway, I put this into the novel and we go through and we discover how she spends what she thinks is only 9 months left. And she goes absolutely wild. She has a do or die list, which is a bucket list, doing things that you never thought she would do. I'm not going to tell you though, because you have to get the book to find out. And she breaks all the rules she can. She lives life to the full, but her main concern is her children. And she's so concerned about them that she does things like makes a wicker basket for them, buys a wicker basket and puts in it candles and a message, and she hides them away so that no one can find them until after she's gone. And the message is, if you want to talk to mummy, put a candle in the window and I will know that you'll want to talk to me and I will be listening to you. And that is why we have this cover, because that is a candle in a window. Oh, and that particular window, the picture was taken by me, and the window is in one of my reception rooms downstairs. Oh, so lovely. I'm actually immortalized one of my windows. So very proud. I'm so pleased you asked me about that. And anyway, at the end of the first book, she's dead. I'll give you that for nothing. And in the second
spoiler.
The second book, we begin with the funeral, which is fascinating because people come back to their funerals, you see, and they wander around and listen to what people are saying, which is why I've decided I don't want one. I don't want loads of people there saying nice things. So
I was going to say I'd be more worried about the ones saying anything horrible.
Well, they never do when you're dead, do they? Such a nice person. Such a shame. So sad. So anyway, and then in the second book, in Sophia's Legacy, we find out how the upstairs people look after the downstairs people. And we watch it go through. And then the third one is 5 years later, when things have changed drastically. The children have grown up. There were twins. And the girl was the more mature one earlier on in life. And then by the time they're 15, it's changed roles. The boy is much more protective of his sister. So that was those 3 books. And I have another thing, which other authors might like to do, which cheers me up. I'm deliberately sitting here in what I call my library, others would call it an office. And if I just swing round slightly, you can see that behind me up there, I have copies of the covers of all of my books. And then when I'm feeling cheesed off or low or miserable, I can look and see what I've achieved. And behind me on the other side is a television. So when I can't work, I can watch TV. You've got to have these things organised, haven't you? So
it's funny you say about that with things to inspire. I haven't got it here actually, but I remember reading Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird, the writing book, and a friend of mine gave me a picture, and it's almost like Christmas tree shape, and it starts off with 1 bird at the top, and then there's 2, and then there's 4, and it sort of grows, so you've got this lovely triangle. And that always reminds me to take writing bird by bird, step by step. So that's one of my inspirations that I have sort of around. So it's funny what we find, isn't it?
It is.
Sorry, go on.
I think we all have to do what we can to keep writing and sort of get our inspiration, etc., from wherever we can. The best thing that works for us.
And you found some very strange inspiration, didn't you, for in horses? Because that didn't start out as just any old idea. It started out as a competition. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, we all want fame and fortune. Well, fame would be nice. Fortune would be even better. And we enter our books into competitions. I entered this one, Love You Forever, into a competition run by an American company. And they opened a page on Facebook for all the contestants, if they wish, to chat to each other. And I thought, this is a great idea. And people were putting sensible things on, like, where's everybody from, you know, and any new writers, etc. And I just had this funny thought, why do I feel like a horse in a paddock waiting for the race to start? And I pondered over it and then decided to put it on. And I thought, well, if they think I'm bonkers, they think I'm bonkers. We're all writers anyway. So, and other people started putting comments on about it. You know, I'm just going to lay down in the hay. I'm just sticking flies off with my tail. I'm off for fodder now. And it went on and on. And there were, in fact, 3 rounds to this competition. It went on for 4 months. And part of it, although we don't think it had any impact at all, was to actually get votes. So the day before the first round started, I said, I'm off to my stall now. I'm taking stall number 5 because it's my favourite number. Anyone want to join me before the race starts? And others were taking numbers, weird numbers from absolutely anywhere. We've got 0, 0 and 9 3/4 and pi and all sorts of peculiar numbers. 666, you know, who have sadly passed away since then, but still.
Oh dear.
And we all started. We were under starters orders, and the day that the voting round, first round started, I said, we're off, yes. And I did this sort of speech based really on Winston Churchill's speech. We will go through mountains together. We will cross seas. We will have fun. We will be friends. And then I thought, what on earth have I done? It carried on for the first round. And during that time, we went all around the world causing mayhem wherever we went. And we had a little foal who was always getting into trouble, and he adored chips. And we ended up on Route 66 and then went back to the Alabama paddock, which was interesting because I didn't know there was a paddock when we started, you know. But anyway, that was the end of that. And it got to the stage where we didn't want to say goodbye. And most of them had been putting comments in the places that you can on Facebook after my main postings. And one person had actually been finding things on YouTube about the places we were visiting. So she was finding things about them, and we were all having a good time. And people were actually saying, oh, this is actually making it worthwhile. It's quite neurotic waiting, you know, for the end result.
Nothing worse is there than waiting to hear from somebody.
And then after about 3 months, of course, we got to round 2, but only 32 were actually successful. And they went out on a second mission, but I wasn't going to give up. Although I was left in the paddock with the others in Alabama, which didn't exist at the beginning, we still carried on. And they all got lost because they hadn't got sat-nav with them, you know, who had been leading them all the way around in the first place. And so we carried on through round 2 and round 3. And by the end of that, it was something like 107,000 words.
Blimey. So it's like a collaborative effort almost, with everybody chipping bits in to make it the huge rump that it became then.
Well, I don't do things by half. You know, I don't write short. I only write long. I'm incapable of writing a short story like you are, you know. I couldn't do it at all. I just start and I keep going. You know? I don't know if it makes sense, but I keep going anyway. Oh, dear. And so, yes, we could have a novel out of this. So that's what I did, rewrote it as a novel. And eventually it was published by Austin Macaulay. Here we are again. And we're hoping, I've got one of our number 4 actually, a very nice shy filly who is writing the screenplay at the moment, and we're hoping to try and get it to Disney. Anyway, that's enough about me, isn't it? Let's have a look at what you've been doing. Tell me about your childhood and development of Squidgy, or should I say the development. You see, I've been talking for far too long. Tell me all about your Squidgy book, please.
Well, Squidgy Scribbles. Well, Squidge for a start is a nickname. It started off, I was in guiding for a long time, And the first camp I went on as a young leader, we all had names of animals, and I was actually Squirrel. But unfortunately, the guides, within about half an hour of being on site, had changed it to Squidge, and it stayed Squidge then for about 20 years in guiding. And I used it initially as my writing moniker when I first joined an online writing community, because I thought, if I'm rubbish at this, I don't want anyone knowing it was really me. I can hide behind this name. But it's sort of become part of my writing persona now. So my blog is called Squidgy Scribbles. And during the lockdown, when I didn't feel that I could create, my imagination was sort of stilted. I played around with an idea of writing a creative writing book to help children and novice writers. And that became Squidgy's Guide to Super Stories and Becoming a Better Writer. So that's why it's not Catherine's Guide to, it's Squidgy's Guide to. So yeah, that's how it came about. And it's basically the kind of thing I tell children and novice writers when I do workshops, all the kind of things to help you develop a story, come up with ideas for stories, develop your characters. So it's writing know-how, but it's presented in quite an informal, fun way. And it's even got some pictures that I've drawn, which was my first sort of attempt at illustrating as well. So yeah, that's Squidgy Scribbles.
Well, I have actually read it, and I loved your pretty pics and the examples and your own ideas, the way it's all suitable for all ages. And in fact, it reminded me of that book by an author who I've forgotten, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse.
Oh, Charlie Maxey?
That's it. Thanks very much. I should have written it down, you see. And it's one, when I read that recently, I read it 3 times in succession because it was a beautiful book and it was so well written, and it had all those little pictures that he'd done as well. And yeah. I'm thinking, that's just what you've done. And he said, you can dip in and out of it. Yeah. And you can dip in and out of your book just the same way. And it's a sort of a lovely little book with brilliant ideas. It's inspirational. It's well planned. You've got all these chapters for children to follow. And I know you emphasize that it's very important for them to read as well as write. And I think that is so important, and people forget that you can't write without you're actually reading.
Definitely. I've had some news about Super Stories actually this week, which if I could, I don't think I've told you yet.
Oh, go on, I'm all ears.
Well, excitingly, it's been longlisted in a children's book prize, the Lunchtime Book Club Prize down in Luton. So it's been selected by a panel of judges at the moment, and now it goes to the children, actually goes to the people it's aimed at, and they will look at this among other books, you know, the other long-listed books, to see what they think of it, and then they vote, and it's who they vote for that gets on the shortlist. So I'm quite excited about that. It's
brilliant,
amazing news. So yeah, I just hope it will do good, you know, for helping young writers to be encouraged and to find their own way in writing, and not think that it has to be all rules and done perfectly, because goodness knows my writing's not perfect to start with at all. It looks a right mess, and it takes a while to, you know, form it up, as I'm sure yours does as well, you know. So yes, it's really exciting news.
It is. So is that another magic moment for you?
I think so, yeah, because I've got sort of so close before on I think Kingstone was longlisted for the Leicester Book of the Year. I think that was 2018, but it didn't make the shortlist, but it was up against some amazing books. So just to be nominated was great. So yeah, there's a few magical moments really. I think the best magical moments are actually when somebody comes to tell you that they've read your book and that they've enjoyed it. You know, that's why I write. I write to get stories to people and in people's hands and encourage people to read. And if they've enjoyed reading it, then that's brilliant. That's success for me. It really is.
Well, there was one of your suggestions which I really liked, and I'm going to pinch it, and that is, you say, take away what the characters want and give them what they fear. I never thought of that. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
I know there are many other brilliant ideas in there as well. And Christmas is round the corner, and I think it would make a great stocking filler. Or parents should buy it, make it a stocking filler to help their children.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Now, I was going to ask you, because I know that you have a set of rings, don't you? And look at that bling. And you've got one for
all of them. Yeah.
Not all of them, because you buy one for every book that you've published, don't you?
I do. And the latest one is this one. That's for the singing horses.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. The first one is this one, and that was for Time and Tide, which I wrote and published in 2000. So
yeah.
It's just two of them. Yes, I love this. It's like having the covers behind me. You look at them and it gives you a sense of achievement, doesn't it? And you've done something worthwhile. And as you say, if people like your book, they read it and tell you they like it, then you feel a sort of satisfaction, really. You've got what you set out to do.
Definitely.
Come on then, spill. What do you do when you've finished a book? Come on.
I do a similar thing. Squidgy Scribbles, I said it again, because the blog Squidgy Scribbles and it's super stories, Squidgy super stories. I keep saying Squidgy Scribbles when I'm talking about the book. Super stories, I've actually bought myself, don't know if you can see that. It's a pen nib necklace.
Beautiful, yeah.
Because of course the book's all about writing stories, so I thought, what better way to market? But I do buy jewellery, star mark on the cover, actually. If you see the cover, I'll try and get it so it's not in the light. You can see that it's a 7-pointed star, which features quite heavily in the book. And it's taken from a photograph, because when I knew it was going to be published, I found myself someone that would make a 7-pointed star necklace for me. Mine has a black stone in it, and I took a photograph, and then at the publishers, they very cleverly sort of changed it so that it's black instead of the silver. Stone in the middle's blue instead of the black that it actually is. So that's my star mark. That's the one I wear when I go to schools and things.
It makes you feel good, doesn't it? And gives you a lot more confidence.
It's not always jewellery, though, I have to say.
Come on, spill, sister, spill.
This month, the third story in the Chronicles of Israel series should be published. And the third one is called Tilde and the Bones of Cradlock. So this is my little gift to myself.
Oh.
So this is, and you can see I've actually painted the 5 rings on there that feature in the story. So I know it looks a bit gruesome. What I'm hoping to do is find some yellow jewels as well, because in the story, there's a skull with yellow diamond eyes. So that's the next step to try and, glam that up. But yeah, so it's not always jewellery for me. I like to have things around, that sort of remind me of themes of the book as well. I'm
just wondering what Mr. Squidgling thinks to that.
Well, he doesn't think much to the books anyway. He called it an expensive hobby once upon a time. Still is an expensive hobby, really.
That's true, yeah.
But no, he puts up with it. He knows I enjoy it. I put up with all his stuff in the garage, so he can put up with my skulls in the lounge.
Anyway, we've heard all about the chronicles that I did through COVID. Let's hear a bit more about your chronicles, please.
Well, the Chronicles of Israel are an adventure story. They started off years and years ago as a story about a boy falling into a book and having to go to search for some rings. And because I've learned how to, rings, because I had to learn how to write to be published, to be of a standard that could be published, the story changed over time. And instead of just one story, it became 5, because the land that it's set in, there are 5 different regions, and Tilde has an adventure in each of them. And it's the different colours of the books as well. This one's red because she's in a region that is associated with colour red, second one was green, the third's going to be yellow, and then there's 2 more to come. So yeah, I like to write fantasy adventure stories with strong female leads, because, you know, very often the girls are the sidekicks, or it's a romance thing when it comes to adventure stories. So yeah, I just let loose with my chronicles. I'm doing number 4 at the minute, just finishing, got to the end of that, and I know where number 5 is going to be, so I'll have to start writing that fairly soon as well. But I was going to say, I don't know whether anyone has any questions for us, actually. I don't know how many are watching in on YouTube. I know we're a bit thin live, but
well, there's nothing coming up. I did look a minute or two. Yeah, I've looked again. I've looked 3 times. They don't want to ask us questions. It's probably because we talk all the time, and we give them so much information, you know, that there aren't any questions for us. They're just gobsmacked. It is indeed.
So, I mean, what's your process then? Do you normally start writing from an idea that just grows? I think you said something about you start at the end sometimes, don't you?
I do. If we go back to this book, you know, the one which I like because it's my favourite cover of all of them, and we go to the very end, you will find the last piece, I don't know if you can see it actually, is "Love you forever," the very last phrase. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Just about.
Yeah. And I always start with the end, and I write the end first. Well, I didn't with The Singing Horses, but most of my novels I've written the end first.
Oh, wow.
And then I go back to the beginning and I write the beginning. And most people say, you know, about the middle, but I say no, the muddle that comes in the middle. And you let the characters take the story forward themselves. If they don't take the story themselves, there's something wrong. It's their story. We're just custodians. So, yeah. You know, and if it's not happening, it's not happening. That's when I look at the pictures behind me and I watch television. Much more fun. I mean, the most exciting thing for me, I think, was when I discovered that one character was a bit preoccupied and he drove out of a side street and straight into a lorry and he was killed. And I was quite surprised because I didn't know it was going to happen, you know. So that's, you know, the way I tend to work most of the time, which is different from most other people, I believe. So.
It is weird, isn't it? When you get to that point where your characters start telling you the story.
It's good.
Because I know I've done a similar thing when I've been stuck in the story before now. I literally start writing to the character and I start questioning the character and going, look, what's going on here? Why isn't this working? And as you sort of start answering in their voice, they will sometimes tell you, your subconscious sort of drags out what it is they want to do in the story. It's not what you, the author, want to do. It's what the character actually would naturally do. And yeah, those kind of moments are really weird. I mean, I thought I was going bonkers the first time one of my characters wanted to do. You know,
well, it was pivotal, you know, in the story anyway when that happened. It was absolutely fantastic. Anyway, coming back to your chronicles of Israel, I said it right, I think. Where can we get them from? And what about giving us your details so that people can contact you?
Okay. Well, they're available on Amazon and they're also available in the online bookshop, you know, the recent rival to Amazon. So if you don't like the big A, you can go elsewhere to buy it online. And you can find me on Facebook just as myself, because I don't have an author profile. So I'm just me. I'm dabbling with Instagram, but still not entirely sure about that one. I can't work out how to forward things. So my input in there is mainly pictures and not a lot else. And then, of course, I've got the blog, Squidgy Scribbles, that you can find me writing about life and writing and all sorts of other things as well. All the other creative things I get up to. So that's where the books are. You can order them via Waterstones or any other good book retailer, but it just takes a bit longer to arrive with them. So yeah, that's where I am, where you can find me, or maybe doing a school visit. You never know. You might
Do you do a lot of school visits?
Sorry?
Do you do a lot of school visits?
Not over the last sort of couple of years, of course, with COVID.
I forgot that. Sometimes I forget about COVID. You know, my own little cocoon here, never mind COVID.
I've really missed it, actually, because one of the biggest thrills for me of being an author is the fact that it gives me the privilege of going in and working with so many young people and enthusing them to write and to read. And I love meeting the kids. I love seeing, because they don't censor themselves like we do. We might write something and think, what will my mum think if she reads that? You know, what will the neighbours think? And kids don't think like that. They just get the story out there. I mean, the child, for example, that came up with the, when I had the story bag, there was a tin of baked beans, a dragon and a police car. So the child came up with the idea of the police had to go and arrest the dragon because instead of the dragon breathing fire, he was farting fire because of the baked beans. And that's the kind of thing that keeps me going. It really does.
Right.
So, I was going to say, on that note, I know we're getting a bit close to time. So
we've got 3 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, 3 minutes. Is that enough to sort of wrap up and point people towards Middleway and everything else that's happening then? Do you reckon?
Well, can I just tell you where you can get my books from?
Oh, sorry.
You've already heard about them. You know. Well, I can be found at Marilyn L. Rice at talktalk.net, or there's my blog at lookaftereachother.blogspot.com. I'm on Instagram as Blessed Angel 51. I'm on Twitter at Marilyn L. Rice. And I've got my author page, also Marilyn L. Rice. But I'd like to remind everybody, actually, that a book is a gift for life. So when you're thinking about presents, you should think about books, because you're not just giving someone something to read, you're giving them a book for life. And when they see it, they see the parcel, they'll know it's a book, but they don't know what's inside, do they? I do think books make beautiful presents. If it's mine, it's even better, but anybody else's will do. So I'm going to hand over to you now to wind the whole thing up for us, because we've got about 2 minutes left.
No problem. Well, I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us online and who might be joining us later to listen in to our conversation. As batty and balmy as it's been, it's like every time we get together, the conversation goes off at all sorts of tangents. But yeah, I just want to encourage people to support authors in the Midlands. There are a lot of us here, and considering that a lot of the hype seems to be based down in London, you can find us as well. And there are lots of independent bookshops that you can go to and find us in. There are lots of local businesses who are printing and typesetting and publishing. So the Midlands has got a lot to offer when it comes to books, and we'd like to thank you for supporting us. Look forward to you supporting us in the future. And there's lots more coming up on the YouTube channel when everything gets posted, and there are more sessions later today. So it's been lovely to chat to you again, Marilyn. I mean, I know we've done this several times over the last few weeks in preparation. Yeah. And, it never ceases to make me smile. I don't think I've stopped smiling. My cheeks hurt now. So it's lovely to have you, and to be chatting. And
it is.
We'd best say goodbye.
Yep. Bye, everyone. Thanks
All
for
right.
joining us.